Hi, with me is the Prime Minister of the Tibetan government in exile. Honorable Prime Minister, I have a very small question. One, when you see the negotiations with China restart, what kind of a format should they have? Should they start from the negotiations which ended in 2010 or a fresh format?
Now, it has already been 14 years since the contacts came to an end in 2010. We had presented a document to the Chinese government calling on genuine autonomy for all the Tibetan areas and for the Tibetan people. And that's still lying by the Chinese government. So, whenever there is a resumption of contact or dialogue or negotiation, then we will have to see whether we should start afresh or whether it should be based on the document that we have already presented to the Chinese government.
Prime Minister, sir, in the morning when the US delegation met the Honorable Dalai Lama, after that there was a public reception in which you presided over, you started the proceedings. And the US delegations made two important points. One, the former Speaker Nancy Pelosi said things have changed, China should be ready. Two, the leader of the delegation, Michael McCall, was very categorical that things have changed in the US and China cannot take things as they were. How do you read these two statements? Because these are very important in aspect of the background of the Resolve Tibet Act being passed by the US Congress with unanimity.
The Tibet Resolve Act, which they have adopted, is in addition to what has already been adopted as law by the US Congress. And this particular act, which will be signed by President Biden in the days to come, speaks about the historical angle of Tibet, where China tries to distort Tibetan history and renders false narrative of Tibetan history to the international community and forces other governments to say Tibet is part of PRC. So this will be countering China's false narrative on Tibet, which is very important because after we came into this position, we decided to change our strategy a little bit because His Holiness always talks about middle way, which is a Buddhist concept. When we say middle, then we talk about the polarities. So one polarity is the situation of Tibet right now under the repressive Chinese government. And the other polarity is the historical status of Tibet as an independent state. So we have been speaking about one polarity, but the other polarity or the historical status we have not been able to focus as much as we would have wanted. So one reason for that is to send a clear message to the Chinese government that they cannot change history. The second message is to the international community that they just cannot repeat what the Chinese government wants them to say. Otherwise, you become an accomplice in the Chinese game over Tibet. And the third reason is for the Tibetans themselves to study Tibetan history. And the fourth reason is to get both the independence advocates and the middle way advocates together to work on one platform so that there will be more unity within the Tibetan movement's struggle.
Thank you for your time, Prime Minister. Really honored. The Tribune will run this, and we will request our viewers to keep listening to this space because the Prime Minister has made very important statements. The US Congress delegation which came had very important words to say about the Tibetan freedom movement and autonomy for Tibet.